Hey y'all. I'm Cassandra Cass Whitmore, 26 years old, and if you're just stumbling onto my channel for the first time, buckle up because what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. Drop your city and your local time in the comments, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any story in the future. Y'all, I genuinely read every single comment. No cap, no bot, just me. Before I get into it, let me just say this: I grew up thinking money was love. I genuinely believed that. And it took losing everything, the penthouse, the trust fund, the designer clothes, the so-called friends, to figure out that I didn't have any of the real stuff. Not even close. This is the story of how my father tried to destroy my marriage at my own wedding, and how the man he publicly humiliated turned out to be his biggest mistake. Let me take you back. About a year and a half ago, to the night I told my father I was marrying someone he'd never approved. My father, Gerald Whitmore, is one of the most powerful commercial developers in all of Chicago. Not like, oh, he has a nice office powerful. I mean, the man has his name on skyscrapers. He's 61 years old, walks into rooms like he already owns them, and genuinely believes that net worth equals human worth. Full stop. Growing up, Whitmore meant everything was choreographed. Which private schools I attended, which kids I was allowed to be friends with, which clubs, which vacations, which opinions I was allowed to hold at the dinner table. By the time I was 17, Dad had already told me, straight up, no sugarcoating, that my marriage would be a strategic alliance. His words. Like I was a piece on a chessboard, not a human being. Love, he told me once over a $300 steak dinner, is what people with no leverage talk themselves into. I didn't know how to push back then. I was just a kid. So I kept my head down, graduated from Northwestern with honors, got my MBA, and walked straight into a marketing VP role at Whitmore Development Group. I thought if I just kept performing, eventually he'd see me. Like really see me. He never did. The night everything changed, we were sitting around the custom mahogany table in our Streeterville penthouse. The one with floor-to-ceiling windows that made Lake Michigan look like it belonged to us. My brother Tanner, 29, was scrolling through his phone, barely present as usual. My mother, Diane, was picking at her salmon and talking about some charity gala she was co-chairing. Dad was reviewing documents while eating. Even at dinner, the man was closing deals. "I've set something up for you," he said, not looking up. "Saturday brunch. Preston Gallagher. His family's firm and mine are exploring a joint venture downtown. It would be mutually beneficial for you two to get comfortable with each other." I set my fork down. "Actually, Dad, there's someone I need to tell you about. Someone I've been seeing. For a year now." Table went quiet like a record scratch. "A year?" His voice didn't rise. It never rose. It just got colder. "You've been seeing someone for an entire year without bringing this to my attention. He's not the kind of person who needed your vetting." "What family? Gallagher? The Hendersons? Don't tell me it's one of the Keating boys." "You don't know him, Dad." The silence after that was suffocating. My mother's eyes went wide. Tanner finally looked up from his phone. "What does he do?" Dad asked slowly. "He runs a woodworking shop. Custom furniture. He builds things with his hands. You would have thought I told him I was joining the circus." I need to go back a little further. About 16 months before that dinner, I was having one of the worst afternoons of my professional life. Dad had just torn apart a full brand strategy I'd spent 6 weeks building, in front of the entire executive team. I called it passable for a junior associate. I had a Northwestern MBA, 3 years of marketing experience, and apparently all of that added up to passable. I was 25. I was exhausted. And I needed to get out of that building before I said something I couldn't take back. I ended up in a furniture workshop in Wicker Park. Not because I planned to, I'd walked past it dozens of times and always been curious about the hand-painted sign in the window that said, "Custom pieces. Real wood. No shortcuts." Something about that sign that day just hit different. I pushed open the door. The whole place smelled like cedar and sawdust, warm and real in a way that nothing in my life felt. There were half-finished tables, shelves lined with grain samples, tools hung on pegboards with military precision. And behind a workbench, sanding the edge of what would become a dining table, was Marcus Webb. 34 years old. 6'1", with sawdust on his forearms and the kind of steady brown eyes that made you feel like whatever you were about to say actually mattered. He wore a broken-in Henley and jeans, and he looked up at me like I wasn't an inconvenience for walking in. "You look like you just survived something," he said, matter-of-fact. "Is it that obvious? You've been standing in my doorway for 2 minutes without saying anything." He smiled. "I figured you either want a table or you need a minute." I laughed. For the first time all day, I actually laughed. We talked for nearly 3 hours. He told me about the shop, how he'd built it from scratch after years of working for other people's vision. I told him about my job, not the title, not the company name, just the exhausting reality of never being enough. He asked about my dreams, what I actually wanted out of life, what made me feel alive outside of work. Not once did he ask about my family or our money. Walking me out at closing time, he said something I'd replayed in my head probably 1,000 times since. "I don't care what neighborhood you're from or what your last name means to somebody else. I just want to know what makes you you." Nobody had ever said that to me. Not once in 25 years. We started dating the next week. Marcus always paid cash, thick folds of bills from a plain leather wallet, nothing flashy. He steered away from fancy restaurants, preferring cozy spots with good food and zero pretense. I figured he was just being thoughtful about money. I had no idea what he was actually hiding. 3 days after I mentioned Marcus's name at dinner, I was summoned. Dad's corner office at Whitmore Development was on the 38th floor, with a view of the entire Chicago skyline that was specifically designed to make you feel small. It usually worked. A manila folder sat on his desk. "Marcus Webb," he read aloud, not looking up. Age 34. Rents a 2-bedroom apartment in Wicker Park. Owns a small woodworking business, Webb Custom Woodcraft, estimated annual revenue under $180,000. No significant assets. No notable family connections. No investments beyond a standard retirement account. He closed the folder. "This is what you chose? He's a good man." "Good men don't build legacies, Cassandra. They get buried by them." He stood, walking to the window. I had the best private investigator in Illinois dig into this man. You know what he found? Nothing. No scandals, no debt, no angle. Just nothing. A completely ordinary person. Maybe that's exactly what I want. He turned, his eyes like cut glass. "You're a Whitmore. You don't get to be ordinary. He doesn't want anything from me, Dad. He doesn't care about the name or the money. That's what you genuinely cannot understand." Dad let out a sharp laugh that had no warmth in it at all. "Everyone wants something. The only question is when they stop hiding it." He slid the folder across the desk toward me. "End this before you embarrass this family further." I left the folder right there and walked out. His investigator found nothing suspicious because Marcus had been very, very careful. Marcus proposed me on a Saturday morning in February. I'd spent the night at his apartment, unpretentious, clean, full of pieces he'd built himself, morning light pouring through windows he kept spotless. He made me eggs and sourdough toast, slightly over-toasted because that's how I like it, and when I looked up from my coffee, there was a small velvet box on the table between us. Inside was a ring. Simple and stunning, a round solitaire on a thin gold band, the kind of thing that catches light like it has a secret. "I know I'm not what your dad had in mind," he said quietly. "I know I can't hand you a lifestyle that comes pre-packaged. But here's what I can give you. I will never try to manage you. I will never make you feel like a supporting character in your own life. And I will show up every single day as someone who is genuinely proud of who you are." I didn't even let him finish. "Yes, Obviously, yes. That night I called my mother. "We're getting married," I told her. "In 3 months. I wanted you to hear it from me." Pause was so long I thought the call dropped. "Cass." Her voice cracked just enough to seem real. "Baby, do you have any idea what this is going to do to your father? To everything we've worked for? I'm getting married to someone I love, Mom." Love? She said it like it was a diagnosis. "You think love covers the bills? You think love maintains a life like ours?" Tanner texted me an hour later. "Oh, you're really doing this? Marrying a guy who makes coffee tables? Bold strategy, sis. Can't wait to see how that shakes out." I didn't reply. Dad called last. His voice was ice in August. "You want a wedding? Fine. I'll give you one." A pause that made the hair on my arms stand up. "One you won't forget." I should have heard the threat in that, but I was too happy to recognize a sharpening blade. Dad's first move was financial. Swift, calculated, and total. I showed up at a bridal boutique on Michigan Avenue, nothing over the top, just a classic dress I'd had my eye on for months. My card declined. Then the backup card. Then the emergency card my mother had given me years ago for real occasions. I called the bank from a fitting room surrounded by ivory silk I suddenly couldn't afford. "I apologize, Ms. Whitmore," the representative said carefully. "Your authorized user status was removed by the primary account holder yesterday morning." My father. He hadn't just threatened, he'd started a financial war. Marcus found me 45 minutes later, still sitting on the floor of that fitting room with my back against the wall. I texted him because I didn't know what else to do. He crouched down next to me and reached for his wallet without a word. No. My pride was faster than my grief. "I need to handle this myself." But he pulled out a stack of hundreds anyway, at least $2,000, held together with a rubber band too casual, too thick for what he claimed to earn. "Let me," he said simply. "I want to." I looked at that money and something flickered in the back of my brain. But I was too overwhelmed to chase it. For the first time in 26 years, I was standing in a store I couldn't afford. And the terrifying truth hit me all at once. Without my father's money, I didn't know who I was. But I was about to find out. The social fallout was surgical. Within 2 weeks, my phone went nearly silent. People I'd known since prep school, girls I'd vacationed with, guys I'd grown up alongside, started falling away like autumn leaves. Texts always came with apologies attached, like that made it better. "Hey Cass, this is so awkward, but you know my dad works with yours and I just can't risk it right now. You understand, right? Nothing personal, I love you. So. Girl, I'm so sorry, but my family has 3 active contracts with Whitmore Development and I can't. Sending you all the love though. 24 years of so-called friendships. Every single one of them had a price tag. And I'd apparently been marked down. At Whitmore Development, where I'd worked for 3 years and genuinely believed I'd earned my place, colleagues started looking through me instead of at me. The whispers followed me through every hallway. HR sent an email on a Thursday afternoon suggesting I step back from client-facing responsibilities pending internal review. They didn't fire me outright. That would have been almost merciful. Instead, they just made sure I knew I was disposable. Through all of it, one person kept reaching out. An estate attorney named Sylvia Drummond. She'd handled affairs for my grandmother before Grandma Ruth passed away 18 months earlier. Her voicemails were gentle, persistent. "Miss Whitmore, there's a matter regarding your grandmother's estate that still requires your attention. Please reach out at your earliest convenience." I kept saving the messages and not calling back. I was too busy drowning to notice someone throwing me a rope. Marcus found us an apartment in Lincoln Square, a 2-bedroom in a brownstone that creaked when you walked and had a tiny back porch overlooking someone's vegetable garden. There was no doorman. No marble anything. Kitchen was the size of some of the closets I'd grown up with. "It's nothing fancy," Marcus said, watching my face as I walked through the empty rooms. It's ours, I said, and meant it more than anything I'd ever said. I cried standing in the middle of that empty living room, and for once the tears weren't from loss. They were from relief. My father's shadow couldn't reach this place. Here I could actually breathe. Marcus held me while I cried, didn't try to problem solve, didn't make promises he couldn't keep, didn't tell me everything was going to be fine. He just stayed. That was everything. Over the next several weeks, I sent out resumes to every marketing agency and brand consultancy in Chicago. 41 applications. Most came back rejected without so much as a phone screen. Word travels fast in a city where one man owns half the commercial skyline. Doors slammed before I could even knock. Maybe I look outside Chicago, I said one night, staring at my laptop. Another rejection. Another dead end. Marcus was quiet, leaning against the counter. Or maybe you stop working for someone else altogether. I don't exactly have startup capital, Marcus. Sometimes you don't need as much as you think. He said it like he knew. At the time, I thought he was just being encouraging. That same week, I woke up at 2:30 in the morning and found his side of the bed empty. Through our cracked bedroom door, I could see him in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. The Q2 projections need to be recalibrated before the board sees them. Don't route it through Davidson. I'll handle the technical review personally. He turned and saw me in the doorway. Something crossed his face, just for a second, before the easy smile came back. Work stuff, he said. Sorry, babe. Go back to sleep. I went back to bed. But I lay there in the dark for a long time, wondering when furniture makers started having board meetings. 1 week before our wedding, Gerald Whitmore showed up at our Lincoln Square apartment. He stood in our doorway in a charcoal Brioni suit that cost more than our monthly rent, looking at our living room like he was afraid something might transfer to him. I'm here to make you an offer, he said, skipping hello entirely. No dramatics. Just business. Marcus stood beside me, hands loose at his side, saying nothing. Dad pulled out a checkbook. $2 million. Cancel the wedding. Come home. We'll call this a phase and move on. I stared at the blank check. $5 million, he said before I could answer. Final number. I'm not for sale. His face did something ugly. Then you're a fool. And when this marriage falls apart, because it will, don't you dare come back. No inheritance. No trust. No shares. No Whitmore name to protect you. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You'll have nothing. Just like him. He said him like it was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Marcus, who hadn't moved, who hadn't raised his voice, who had that unsettling stillness that I was only beginning to understand, looked at my father and said very quietly, Mr. Whitmore, I think it's time for you to leave. Oh, the craftsman speaks. Dad laughed. Enjoy her while the novelty lasts. When she figures out what she gave up, she'll resent you for it. I don't think she will. Something passed between them. I couldn't name it then. My father's smirk flickered just a hair before he turned and walked out. He's going to make the wedding a nightmare, I whispered. Marcus took my hand. Let him try. We had planned something intimate. 80 guests at a restaurant in Logan Square we both loved. Exposed brick walls, Edison lights, a playlist we'd built together over a year of Sunday mornings. Meaningful. Ours. We arrived to find it overrun. 300 people already seated, spilling out onto the covered patio, through the bar, taking up every inch of space. Women in couture. The men in custom suits. My father's world, uninvited and completely shameless. Mom sat in the front row, handkerchief ready. Tanner scrolled his phone, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. And there in the center of it all, champagne in hand, was Gerald Whitmore, grinning like a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Surprise, sweetheart. Kissed my cheek before I could step back. I couldn't miss my only daughter's wedding. What did you do? I gave you the celebration you deserve. His eyes said, I gave you a stage and I'm about to be the only act. I looked at Marcus. We can leave right now. You say the word. I looked around at my father's satisfied smile, at the reporters with their phones already out, at the altar Marcus and I had chosen together. No. I straightened my spine. We're getting married today. Whatever he's got planned, we face it together. I had no idea what was coming. My father waited until the vows were done. We'd exchanged our words, Marcus's quiet and sure, mine shaking with emotion. The officiant announced us married. For one perfect, suspended moment in the middle of all that chaos, I was completely happy. Then came the sound of a fork against crystal. Gerald Whitmore stood up, center of the room, glass raised. 300 people turned to watch like this was exactly what they'd come for. A toast, he announced. To my daughter and her husband. He let the words sit there long enough to curdle. I built everything I have from scratch, he continued, moving slowly through the room like he was giving a keynote. Every contract, every building, every dollar, earned through sacrifice most people can't imagine. And I dreamed my daughter would one day stand beside someone who understood what that kind of legacy requires. He stopped directly in front of our table and looked down at Marcus like he was appraising something with no resale value. Instead, she chose this. A man who sands wood for a living. A nobody from Wicker Park with sawdust on his sleeves and nothing in his accounts. So I wanted on record, here, in front of everyone who matters in this city, effective today, Cassandra Whitmore is no longer my daughter. She is removed from my will. Her trust fund is dissolved. Any claim she had to Whitmore Development is gone. He raised his glass to the room. When you choose sentiment over strategy, you get exactly what you earn. Congratulations, sweetheart. Hope it was worth it. He drained his glass and set it on our table. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Marcus stood up slowly. No rush, no anger, just that stillness that I'd started to realize wasn't emptiness, it was control. He straightened his tie, a plain navy one that he'd spent exactly $0 obsessing over, and looked my father in the eye. Thank you for coming, Mr. Whitmore. And for your blessing. Dad snorted. I just told you you're getting nothing. I heard you. Marcus stepped forward until they were face to face. I want you to know we don't need it. You own a workshop worth less than my car, son. What exactly do you think you're offering my daughter? Marcus smiled. Small. Private. Like he knew something the rest of the room would eventually catch up to. Something you've never had to offer anyone, Mr. Whitmore. A pause. Her. Near the back of the room, an older man, silver-haired, elegant, the kind of quiet expensive that doesn't need to announce itself, stood and watched the whole exchange with sharp eyes and the faintest smile. He'd arrived with Marcus's guests. I hadn't thought to ask who he was. My father glanced at the man. Something moved across his face. Something like uncertainty. Enjoy your mediocrity, Dad said. But it came out hollow. He turned and left, my mother and Tanner trailing behind like pull toys. Now it was my turn. I turned to face 300 people, society columnists, my father's business partners, people who'd come fully expecting a public meltdown, and I took a breath. My father believes money is the only real currency, I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. He believes love is a business transaction and family is a portfolio. I know this because I spent 26 years trying to earn a seat at that table. I looked at my mother, who still couldn't meet my eyes. Tanner, who'd finally put his phone down. At the crowd of beautiful strangers who'd come to watch me crumble. I got adequate. I got passable. I got good enough for now. And I nearly believed that was all I was worth. Marcus reached over and took my hand. Today I chose something different. I chose to be loved for who I am, not managed for what I represent. And if that costs me everything I was supposed to inherit, then maybe it was never really mine. I looked out at the crowd. If you came tonight to watch something fall apart, I'm genuinely sorry to disappoint you. This is a celebration. The door is right there if you need it. But if you want to actually celebrate with us... I smiled. Welcome to our wedding. About 40 people left, but the other 260 stayed. Some of them were even my father's people. He hadn't counted on that. The moment the doors closed behind him, the whole room shifted, like a pressure valve releasing. Someone started clapping, real, genuine applause, and it spread. The DJ, who'd been frozen in place for the last 10 minutes, finally found his nerve and started the music. Our wedding became ours again. The honeymoon phase of our actual life together lasted about 8 weeks before the job hunt broke me. 47 marketing applications. 3 total interviews, all of which evaporated after the first round once people made the connection. Doors that should have been open just weren't. Chicago's a big city, but certain industries are small towns, and my father's name, even in its absence, controlled traffic. Maybe I start something myself, I said one night over cheap Thai takeout, rejection email still glowing on my screen. But I've got maybe $4,000 to my name. Marcus was quiet, looking out the window. Sometimes that's enough. Marcus, be serious. I am being serious. Something in the way he said it made me look up. He met my eyes and then looked away. That shadow again. That secret behind his calm. 3 months after the wedding, I finally called Sylvia Drummond back. Her office was in a brownstone on the north side, the kind of place that smelled like old books and confidentiality, leather chairs worn soft by decades of serious conversations. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Webb," she said warmly, emphasizing my married name in a way that felt deliberate and kind. "Your grandmother would be so proud of who you've become." Hearing about Grandma Ruth made my throat tight. She died 18 months ago, the only person in my family who'd ever truly seen me, not the performance of me. "You mentioned the estate." Sylvia slid a folder across the desk. "Before she passed, Ruth Whitmore established a separate trust, completely independent of anything your father could access or influence. Her instructions were specific. I was to notify you only after you had married someone of your own choosing, without your father's approval." I stared at her. She knew Cassandra. She understood exactly what kind of man her son had become, and she wanted to make sure you had options regardless. Trust held $450,000 in diversified assets. Became mine the day I married Marcus Webb. Inside the folder was a handwritten letter on cream paper, in the loopy, deliberate script I'd know anywhere. "My darling Cass, if you're reading this, you finally chose your own path, and I am so proud I could burst. Your grandfather and I had absolutely nothing when we started. No connections, no safety net, no last name that meant anything to anybody. What we had was each other and a stubborn refusal to let the world tell us our value. This money won't make you rich, but it will give you room to begin. Use it to build something that's actually yours. I love you more than you know. All my heart, Grandma Ruth." I cried in that office for a long time. But for the first time in months, they were tears of something that felt like hope. I launched Drummond Creative, named for Grandma Ruth's maiden name, a deliberate act of reclamation, 6 weeks later. I rented a desk in a co-working space in Fulton Market, designed my own brand identity, and started knocking on doors that had nothing to do with my father's world. First client, a coffee roaster in Andersonville who needed help with their social media presence. I charged them half my normal rate just to build the portfolio. Then a used bookshop in Hyde Park. A family-owned restaurant in Pilsen. A sustainable fashion startup in Logan Square. Word spread, not through the city's power networks but through the real Chicago. People who judged work by results and referrals, not last names. Within 2 months, I had more work than I could handle alone. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said one evening, watching me work at our kitchen table, surrounded by brand mock-ups and a cold cup of coffee. I couldn't have started without Grandma Ruth's trust, I said. You would have found a way. He said it with a certainty I didn't quite understand. Then that same week, an email arrived that made me go completely still. Subject, Partnership Inquiry, Apex Technologies Group. Dear Ms. Drummond, Apex Technologies is impressed by your firm's work with emerging Chicago businesses and believes your approach aligns strongly with our brand values. We would be pleased to discuss a potential marketing partnership. Please reach out at your earliest convenience. Apex Marketing Division. I'd never heard of Apex Technologies. A quick search told me they were one of the fastest-growing tech infrastructure companies in the country, and currently in the market for real estate partnerships to build a massive data center in the Midwest. The deal was reportedly worth $60 million. Every developer in Chicago was chasing it, including, I would discover, my father. 2 weeks before a major tech gala Marcus had been quietly preparing for, he sat me down on a Sunday morning. Pancakes on the table, the apartment warm with coffee and light. His face was more serious than I'd ever seen it. I need to tell you something, he said. And I need you to let me finish. My stomach dropped. The woodworking shop is real, he said carefully. I do own web custom woodcraft, and I genuinely love building furniture. That part isn't a performance. It's how I stay grounded. He looked at his hands. But it's not how I pay my bills. Not even close. Marcus, I work in tech, Cass. I've been in the tech industry for a decade. And when I say in it, I don't mean as an employee. The room felt like it was tilting slightly. How in it? I want you to see it yourself at the gala. Not me telling you. I want you to see it. He reached into the console table drawer and pulled out a thick cream envelope with gold calligraphy. This is your invitation. VIP access as my guest. I opened it. Inside, an embossed card. The Midwest Technology Foundation cordially invites you to the annual Impact Gala. Guest of honor, Marcus Webb. Marcus? My voice came out barely above a whisper. Who are you? He took my face in both hands. His eyes were more open and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. This man who had stood completely still while my father tried to dismantle him at our wedding. I'm the man who loves you. Everything else is just context. For the next 2 weeks, I became obsessed. I Googled Apex Technologies CEO until my eyes blurred. Company was famously private. No leadership photos, no press junket headshots, no conference panels, nothing. Forbes had done a feature on them months ago called Inside the World of Apex's Shadow Founder, a long investigation into a young tech entrepreneur who'd built a multi-billion-dollar company while remaining essentially invisible to the public eye. I thought about every late-night phone call I'd overheard. Casual stack of hundreds. The way certain people looked at Marcus, with deference, with respect, when we'd been out together. The silver-haired man at our wedding who'd watched the whole scene with that knowing smile before shaking Marcus's hand goodbye. Pieces had been there the whole time. I just hadn't been looking at the right puzzle. The Chicago Cultural Center had been transformed into something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers, 500 of the most powerful people in American technology and finance, the kind of room that hums with accumulated influence. I walked in on Marcus's arm wearing a dress he'd had waiting in our closet the morning of, an elegant black Valentino that fit perfectly and probably cost more than our rent, though I'd stopped doing that math. Marcus moved through the crowd with a comfort that had nothing to do with ego. He nodded to people who nodded back with a particular kind of respect, the kind you can't manufacture. A senator shook his hand and said, looking forward to the announcement tonight. A tech executive steered his whole group toward Marcus to make an introduction. I was still processing all of this when I saw them. Dad, Mom, Tanner, standing near the bar, working the room with their practiced Whitmore smiles. Dad's eyes swept the crowd with the restless energy of a man looking for an angle. Then his gaze landed on me. He started walking over. Mom hurried to keep up. Cassandra. He smiled tightly, like seeing me here didn't compute. What a surprise. I didn't realize you were in these circles. He looked at Marcus with a businessman's grin. Predator kind. Don't tell me you crashed this event, son. Security should really raise the bar on these things. He laughed at his own joke. Marcus looked at him with complete, unruffled calm. Mr. Whitmore. Good to see you. A woman in a headset appeared at my father's elbow. Mr. Whitmore, the CEO of Apex Technologies, will be making remarks in about 15 minutes. Your table is ready at the sponsor section. Dad waved her off without breaking eye contact with Marcus. Still smirking. Still completely sure of himself. He had no idea. The lights dimmed. The room stilled like a held breath. The Apex Technologies logo appeared on the main screens, a clean geometric design I'd seen on the Forbes article, elegant and restrained. Footage rolled, infrastructure projects, medical AI applications, climate modeling software, self-driving logistics. $500 billion of impact, narrated by data. Then the MC's voice filled the room. Tonight marks a genuine first. The founder and CEO of Apex Technologies, a company that has transformed 4 different industries and currently holds a valuation of $5.3 billion, will address a public audience for the very first time. The murmur that went through 500 people was something I felt in my chest. My father leaned forward in his seat. Please welcome Marcus Webb. The room erupted. My father's champagne glass stopped moving halfway to his lips. Marcus, my Marcus, the man who built furniture in Wicker Park, who paid for things with cash and drove a truck that needed a new muffler, walked onto that stage like he'd been standing in front of rooms like this his entire life. 'Cause he had been. The screens lit up with his name. Marcus Webb. Founder and CEO, Apex Technologies. I looked at my father. Gerald Whitmore's face had gone the color of chalk. Marcus spoke for 25 minutes. He was brilliant, sharp, precise, genuinely passionate about the work and its implications, warm with the audience without being a performer. He talked about building without shortcuts, about infrastructure that serves communities that are usually overlooked, about what it actually means to create lasting value. I barely heard the content. I was watching my father. He sat completely motionless in his chair, staring at the stage like the laws of physics had just been revised without his consent. My mother kept touching his arm, whispering. He didn't respond. Tanner, for the first time I could ever remember, looked genuinely speechless. When Marcus finished, 500 people stood up. I stood up too, my vision blurring, my heart doing something complicated. Marcus found my eyes from the stage. Just for a second. Just for me. After, the room crowded around Marcus like magnets finding north. But he had one stop first. He walked directly to where my father was still seated, still hadn't fully stood, still processing, and stopped in front of him. Mr. Whitmore. Marcus's voice was even, professional, almost gentle. I believe you've been pursuing a conversation about a partnership with my company. Dad looked up. His mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. You, his voice came out strangled. You're the one I've been trying to reach for 2 years? Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and placed a business card on the table. Marcus Webb. Apex Technologies. Forbes reported our valuation recently, Marcus said. I imagine the number is on your mind right now. $5.3 billion. My husband was worth more than twice what my father had spent a lifetime accumulating. My father's recovery was almost impressive. Within seconds, the businessman's smile was back, the warm, collegial one he deployed when he needed something. He stood and extended his hand. Marcus, this is remarkable. I've always told Cassandra she had exceptional judgment. I think we've all gotten off on the wrong foot here. The opportunities for collaboration between our firms. You called me nothing, Mr. Whitmore. Marcus's voice stayed completely pleasant. At my own wedding in front of my wife, you told 300 people I was a nobody with sawdust on my sleeves. You called me a charity case. A waste of your daughter's potential. I didn't know. I know you didn't. Marcus nodded. That's the point. Whether I was building furniture or running a tech company, I was the same person. The only thing that changed was your perception of what I was worth. That should concern you. He finally took the extended hand, but only to press his own card further into it. I've made my decision on the Midwest Data Center partnership, Marcus said, loud enough to be heard by the people beginning to circle. Apex will not be working with Whitmore Development. What? Why? Because I don't do business with people who treat their families like liabilities to be managed. Your daughter chose love over a transaction. You punished her for it publicly. I don't reward that. He stepped back and put his arm around my waist. Congratulations on your other projects, Mr. Whitmore. Enjoy the evening. By midnight, someone had finally posted the full video from our wedding. My father's entire toast, the public disinheritance, the insults, all of it, now with the spectacular context of what had happened 3 hours later at that same gala. By morning, it had 4 million views. The headlines were merciless. Chicago real estate giant publicly humiliated son-in-law at wedding. Turns out he's worth $5.3 billion. The $60 million mistake. How Gerald Whitmore's pride cost him everything. Apex Technologies CEO finally goes public, and his father-in-law wishes he hadn't. Within 10 days, 2 of my father's major investment partners announced they were reassessing their arrangements. A significant commercial project lost 3 anchor tenants citing concerns about organizational leadership. The board of Whitmore Development reportedly called an emergency session. And then Tanner showed up at our door. He looked smaller somehow. No Instagram energy, no smirk. Just my brother, hands in his pockets, shifting his weight on our front step. Hey. He cleared his throat. I wanted to apologize for everything I said. Posts, the texts, all of it. It was really messed up of me and... You want access, Marcus said simply. Tanner's face went red. Come on, man. We're family. Think about what we could build together. Whitmore and Apex, that's... Marcus opened the front door wider. Then stepped aside so Tanner could see it was an exit, not an invitation. You had a year to be her brother, Marcus said. You chose Instagram captions. I think you know where the door is. Closed. Some apologies are actually just repositioning strategies. Marcus recognized them on sight. My mother called 4 times before I picked up. Sweetheart. Her voice was all honey. I want you to know I always supported you deep down. At the wedding, I wanted to say something, but you know how your father gets, and I had to. Protect yourself, I said. Yeah. You told me. Cass. I have a letter, Mom. My voice was steady. I'd thought about this conversation for a long time. Grandma Ruth's attorney found a correspondence in the estate files. An email you sent Dad 3 days before my wedding. It said, and I'm paraphrasing, that Dad was right, that I needed to be cut off for a while, that I'd come back once I'd had enough of struggling. The silence stretched out long and flat. That was taken out of context. Was it? I let her sit with that for a moment. I don't hate you, I said finally, and that was the truth. The anger had burned off somewhere over the past year, leaving something quieter and clearer behind. But you were part of it. And I need you to own that if you want to be in my life. Not around it. In it. Cass. I'll call you when I'm ready. Please don't call me until then. I hung up gently. Some boundaries have to be drawn in silence. My father came to our door alone. No driver. No entourage. Just Gerald Whitmore in regular clothes, not even a nice jacket, standing on our front step looking like a man who'd had something taken away from him that he'd never expected to lose. Not the money. Not the deal. Something else. Something harder to name. May I come in? I stepped aside. He looked around our apartment, the second-hand furniture, the photos from our wedding on the wall, the custom side table Marcus had built for our living room, and for once, he didn't seem to be calculating the value of anything. He just looked. I've lost 4 partnerships in 3 weeks, he said quietly. The data center deal is dead. The board is talking about a leadership review. He laughed, and it was the most human sound I'd ever heard from him. Hollow and genuine at the same time. Turns out there are consequences for how you treat people. Who knew? I'm sorry about your business problems. I paused. Actually, I'm not. Not really. You'd see through that anyway. He looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time. I was wrong. About Marcus. About what matters. About you. He said it plainly, no performance attached. 3 sentences that must have cost him something significant. I'd waited my entire life to hear them. Standing there now, I mostly just felt tired. I don't need your apology, Dad. Then what do you need from me? I thought about it honestly. I need you to understand that I was happy before I knew. Before the gala, before Forbes, before any of it. When I thought Marcus was just a man who built furniture and paid cash and made slightly overcooked eggs, I was happier than I ever was in your world. I held his gaze. Can you understand that? Not accept it tactically, actually understand it? Something shifted in his face. Not a transformation. Nothing that cinematic. But something genuine. Something cracking open. I'm trying, he said. Then try harder. And keep trying. I put my hand briefly on his arm. I'm willing to have you in my life, Dad. Not as someone who manages me. Not as someone who values me by my husband's net worth. Just as my father. If you can figure out what that looks like. He nodded slowly. I don't know how to do that. I know, I said. That's the work. Drummond Creative now has 12 employees and a wait list. We didn't get there because Marcus wrote a check or made an introduction. We got there because we earned it, one client at a time, one campaign at a time, on referrals from people who'd actually seen the work. Our biggest contract came in last month from a national consumer brand that found us through a recommendation from the bookshop in Hyde Park. I built something. Mine. From scratch. And I know exactly what it's worth because I know exactly what it cost. Marcus still goes to the woodworking shop on weekends. He says it's not about nostalgia, it's about staying connected to the version of himself that existed before the billions, the one who built things because building things felt true. Sometimes I go with him. He's teaching me to sand properly, which I am terrible at, and we both laugh about it. My father is in therapy. That's not a joke, my mother told me, and I believe it. He's asked me to coffee twice in the past 4 months. Both times he asked about my life and my work and actually listened to the answers. He didn't offer opinions unless I asked. He didn't steer the conversation back to himself. Progress. Small, halting, real. This past Thanksgiving, we went to Marcus's family home in Evanston. His mom, his sister, his grandmother who still calls everyone baby and means it. Real food, real noise, real laughter. I sat at that table and felt something I hadn't felt in 26 years of Whitmore holiday performances. At home. On the drive back, Marcus reached over and took my hand in the dark. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about the penthouse. The trust fund. $200 million that disappeared with a signature. Career that got torched. The friends who weren't. All the things I'd been promised that turned out to be leashes. Then I thought about our creaky apartment, about Grandma Ruth's letter, about building something with my own hands and knowing it wouldn't be taken away, about being loved the way Marcus loved me, not as an asset, not as a liability, just as a person who deserved to be seen. Not a single one. He squeezed my hand. And somewhere across the city, my father was doing the hard work of learning how to be just a dad. But I'd stopped keeping score a long time ago. Real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or buildings or how many people whisper your last name with reverence. It's measured in the peace you feel when you finally stop auditioning for your own life and just start living it. If you took anything from this, let it be this: don't let anyone set the price on you. Not your family, not your past, not the version of yourself you were performing for somebody else's approval. You get to decide what you're worth. And it's a lot more than you've been told. Please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and drop where you're watching from. If this hit close to home, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Check the description for more stories like this. Type "I choose me" if you've ever walked away from something safe to find something real. See you next time.